Dear listeners, thank you for supporting us with your subscription. Enjoy watching. I don't know if this story will be of interest to anyone. Reading confessions like this, almost everyone thinks that this could happen to someone else, but not to them. That's what I thought, up to a point. What happened to me is typical of our time when faithfulness is no longer a virtue, but a sneer at best. I got married quite early, at the age of 19. In my third year of college, my wife is 1 year younger than me, a normal age arrangement for a family. In the first year we had a son, and 8 years later a daughter. Right after college, I joined the army. They paid me a good salary, and my wife was able to stay home and take care of our children. I spent a lot of time in the country and abroad. As a result, I received a couple of medals and a shrapnel in my back. I was discharged at the age of 42. After leaving the army, I immediately went to work in my first profession at a large metallurgical company. 5 years later, I became the deputy general director and co-owner. So I had no financial problems, and that remains true to this day. Now I am 60 years old and my wife is 59. At the time of the events, we had been married for 41 years. And during all that time, I had no reason to doubt my wife's faithfulness. I never once raised my voice at her, and she never refused anything I gave her. I truly loved her, and we never had any intimacy problems despite her age. My wife managed to maintain and even enhance her natural beauty without resorting to the tricks of cosmetologists. It's a wonderful feeling when your partner looks so attractive, and as it turned out, I wasn't the only one who thought so. For the last 15 years, my wife Natasha worked at a pharmaceutical company as the head of the marketing department. Her job required her to travel frequently, especially in the last 5 years. Sometimes her business trips lasted for 2 or 3 months. She explained that she had to regulate the supply of drugs to pharmacies, particularly in large cities. She often had to be in K during these trips. Despite being away, my wife never forgot to call me almost every day and tell me how much she missed me and the kids. Once, our metallurgical company made a contract with our colleagues for the delivery of welded pipes for an oil pipeline, and I, as a co-owner, was involved in the process. As a deputy general director, I went to the location for the final decision on the deliveries. That is where everything happened. After signing the contract, we went to the office of their general director. As is usual on such occasions, a table was set with drinks and light snacks. On the CEO's desk, there were a few pictures. I looked at them, and it took my breath away. In one picture, the owner of the office was standing with a stunning red-haired woman whom I immediately recognized as my wife, Natasha. To be honest, my mind went blank. With an incredible effort of will, I pulled myself together and deliberately asked in a different tone, who was in the picture? The general proudly explained that it was his favorite woman, with whom he had been for 4 years. He then offered to continue the celebration at his country mansion, promising to introduce me to his common-law wife. On the way, he praised his beloved, telling me what a great hostess she was. He also mentioned that she often had to go to her sick mother and be with her for a long time, but he hoped that everything would work out and they could be together. As I listened to his revelations, my heart was pounding in my throat. I was very afraid that I couldn't handle it and I might strangle him. However, in some part of my mind, I knew that he had nothing to do with it. We arrived at a well-kept mansion, and the owner invited me in, asking why I was so red. I mumbled that I wasn't feeling well. We went into the dining room and he proudly introduced me to his wife, Natasha. She froze when she saw me, and it was obvious that she was short of breath. She turned white and began to slowly sink to the floor. Her friend barely had time to catch her in his arms. I realized that if I didn't leave now, I could harm them both. So, without saying a word, I turned around and almost ran out of the mansion. A cab happened to be passing by, so I stopped it just in time. I picked up my things from the hotel and rushed to the airport. With great effort, I managed to get a ticket for the next flight. It was only on the plane that I began to come to my senses. In my head, the rhythm of my heartbeat was pulsing with one question. Why was she doing this to me? I barely remember how I got home. I paced around the apartment, repeating the question over and over again. I couldn't sit or lie down. By morning, my legs were swollen from the exertion. My heart was no longer pounding, it was rumbling periodically, almost falling somewhere down. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my chest and lost consciousness. My driver found me when I didn't show up at the agreed time for him to take me to work. Concerned, he used his key to open the apartment and found me unconscious on the floor. He immediately called an ambulance. Thank God everything turned out to be all right. My heart rhythm was disturbed from the nervous tension, and this provoked a severe pain. I was in the hospital for about 3 weeks. During that time, Natasha tried to call me, but I didn't answer the phone. Then I turned it off. When I got home, I turned it back on, and the phone rang. Natasha was talking nonsense, trying to explain something, asking for forgiveness, and even accusing me of something. Towards the end of the conversation, she started screaming that the children and I were everything to her, that she loved only me, and begged for my forgiveness. I listened to her until the end, and then silently disconnected the phone. I couldn't take it anymore. For 4 years, my wife lived a double life. She twisted and turned, afraid of being caught, and lied to me and our children the entire time. Despite her great love for the oil industry and one of its bigwigs, she was also living a parallel life with me. Was I just a backup plan for her? Throughout this time, my children were trying to find out what had happened, but I was too afraid and ashamed to tell them everything, even though I knew I would have to do it sooner or later. Natasha came back a month later, still hoping to somehow convince me to forgive her. After listening to her for about an hour, I called my son and daughter. When they arrived, I suggested that Natasha tell them herself. The children sat in silence, listening to her rambling speech. She boiled it down to the fact that I didn't pay enough attention to her, that I didn't see her as a woman. So she found love on the side, and it was stronger than her love for us. But she still loves us very much and asks for our forgiveness. My son was the first to speak, saying, "Mother, you did a terrible thing to us and to Father. It's Daddy's business, but I can't forgive you." My daughter stood silently, tears rolling down her face. Without saying a word, she left the room. Natasha understood everything. She suddenly became sullen, slumped her shoulders, and left the apartment without even looking at me. I went to the window and watched as my ex-wife came out of the staircase and got into a waiting cab. She went back to her lover in K. She showed up 6 months later. Her new husband had been killed in a car accident, and his children quickly evicted her from the mansion. With no other options, she came back to our city. She tried to see me several times, but I refused to talk to her. The children didn't return her calls either. Now she lives in her parents' apartment and works in a pharmacy. I know nothing about her personal life. Dear listeners, please like and subscribe to our channel. Your support encourages me to release new videos for you.